Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the Palestine Center. I keep forgetting to do this and my staff keeps reminding me, please turn off your cell phones. Today we are again going to address the conditions and the situation in Gaza. We have with us Mr. Joe Stork, who is Deputy Director of Human Rights Watch's Middle East and North Africa Division. He is an expert on human rights issues in the region. Before joining Human Rights Watch in 1996, Stork co-founded the Middle East Research and Information Project and served as chief editor of Middle East Report, its bi-monthly magazine. He is the author of numerous books and widely published articles on the Middle East, and he has lectured widely at universities and public forums around the world. Stork served as Peace Corps volunteer in Turkey and holds a master's in International Affairs Middle East Studies from Columbia University. We will be addressing the current situation in the Gaza Strip, looking at it from a humanitarian and legal aspect, but also Mr. Stork will put the current situation in context of the now 19-month-old siege, which continues till today. Today we heard that many international organizations have expressed their outrage that Israel still is not allowing any of the aid or personnel to come into Gaza. So please welcome Mr. Joe Stork.
Well, thanks for the invitation to come and be with you this afternoon, and thanks for all of you for coming out and getting a little chilly, probably, on the way. Actually, I brought along a document, which I'm going to circulate. I mean, there are copies, probably enough for everybody, of a briefing paper on the humanitarian situation in Gaza that we produced early last week. We released it early last week, so that's about sort of two-thirds of the way through the three-week military operation. And you know, I don't think I'm going to say anything today, at least not in my remarks, that isn't in there. And sort of based on that document, it will, of course, the situation has changed somewhat since that was produced. There is now a ceasefire of uncertain duration. There is some aid, humanitarian aid, getting in. There is certainly a lot more ability to move around in Gaza than there was, just a few days ago. Two of my colleagues were able to get in last night through the Rafah crossing. Certainly one of the distinctive features of this particular operation was the Israeli ban on any media, human rights monitors, most outside observers. There were a few humanitarian workers, a couple of doctors who were allowed in the course of the fighting, or were allowed in through, I should say the Egyptians allowed them in over the Rafah crossing. So that ban on sort of any sort of outside eyes and ears is quite striking, and seems to be one of the IDF lessons learned from the Lebanon war of 2 years ago. What the document does, as you will see soon enough, is it looks at a number of different sectors, if you will. It looks at the issue of access to health and medical care. It looks at the question of access to food, access to water, the related issue of sewage and sewage facilities, and then finally electricity and power more generally. Now, of course, all of these or most of these issues are sort of interlocking, you could say. Certainly the access to water is very dependent in Gaza anyway on access to electricity for reasons I can go into if you wish. So it looks at those sort of five sectors: health, food, water, sewage, and electricity or power. And then it concludes with a discussion of sort of what are the legal standards, what are the obligations of the parties to the conflict, Israel, but also Hamas and the Palestinian armed groups with regard to these issues. And then it takes each of these sectors and looks looks at the situation under sort of three categories. One, to what extent was access to health, water, food, etc., affected by the closure, by the blockade that's been imposed by Israel on Gaza since for the last 19, 20 months. Actually longer than that, but it's been particularly severe. It's sort of been in this heightened form for about the last 20 months. So it looks at the situation prior to the fighting. Just what was the situation with regard to food, water, etc., as of December 26th, the day before the fighting. Then it looks at the impact of the fighting itself, or the security, the deteriorated security situation on each of those sectors. And that's presuming that everybody was fighting according to the laws of war, okay? In other words, simply the fact that there were military operations ongoing would have obviously affected civilians' access to health, to water, to food, etc. And then thirdly, it looks at what appear to be serious violations of international humanitarian law, laws of war, on those different sectors: access to water, health, food, etc. So that's what that document does, and that's what I will, in a very summary fashion, run through this afternoon, and with the intent of leaving lots of time for any questions you might have or discussion we might have on any of these issues. And feel free to raise other issues related to Gaza and our work there. If you wish, please feel free to do that. So, we're talking about an area, offhand I can't recall what exactly the square kilometers or square miles is, but it's not very large, and but it's home to 1.5 million or so people. It's certainly one of the more densely populated places on the face of the earth. And the other distinctive feature, sort of the political geography of Gaza, is that it's occupied territory. It's not a separate country with which Israel is at war. It's a territory that Israel still controls. It controls all of the sea access. It controls all the airspace, and of the land borders, it controls all but about 15 kilometers, or about 10 miles of the Gaza border with Egypt, and it controls those very tightly. It imposes severe restrictions. It has the ability to impose total control over what gets into and out of Gaza, with the exception of the Rafah crossing over the Egypt-Gaza border. But even there, the Israelis have had the pretty full cooperation of the Egyptian government. So there's some collaboration, if I dare use that word, in all of this. And I have to say, in terms of humanitarian impact, and particularly looking at the situation before the military operation began on December 27th, the fighting between Hamas and Fatah, or Hamas and the PA, if you will, or the dispute over who is the real PA, Palestinian Authority, has also contributed in no insignificant way to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And again, this paper that you have does not go into that aspect refers to it, but doesn't go into it in great detail. But I'd be happy to discuss that if that's something you'd like to pursue.